लगा के मिट्टी का तू बाजी आज लगा ले, ओ तिलक लगा के मिट्टी का तू बाजी आज लगा ले, तुझ में जो चिंगारी है उस शोला आज बना ले, जान लगा के खेल खिलाड़ी, ओ जान लगा के खेल खिलाड़ी, साथ हमेशा स्पोर्ट्स इंडी, शान बढ़ा तू रहे अगाड़ी, जीत की भाषा स्पोर्ट्स इंडी, 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 स्पोर्ट्स इंडी।
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to SportsIndi presents World of Sports, produced by Meeta Group. And today we are here to celebrate womanhood, honoring women coaches in sports. And today we have a veteran sports psychologist with us, Mrs. Neeta Tatke, ma'am. And we'll soon get her live, and we'll speak a lot of things which is related to sports psychology. So welcome, ma'am, and also a warm welcome from the entire team of SportsIndi, and of course a very warm welcome by Mrs. Supriya Badve, our founder and CEO of SportsIndi. So just to start off with, we have Neeta Tatke ma'am with us, and if I have to tell you about her achievements, I think it's a long list of achievements that is there, and that's why she's the most senior and an expert in sports psychology, right from getting invited to the state of Israel to participate in professional training programs organized by Mashav Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, on educational methodologies, lot of things. Again, presented research paper on Malcolm in the session of sports psychology in athletes at 13th European Congress of Psychology, Stockholm in Sweden, and many more, grand achievements which we'll surely talk about. But since ma'am is here with us, we would like to know a lot about, what is sports psychology, and a lot of people, for them it's a very new subject, it's a very fresh subject. But if you try to, dive in deeper, there's a lot more branches that you will explore. There's a lot of, ocean, I would say, and lots to learn from sports psychology and how it can mentally, make you very strong, stable. So when I say mind over body, and I ask you what is sports psychology, how will you, explain us?
Uh, as simple as that, it is the psychological factors which get involved in sports. See, what we need to understand is in a club level match, the two individuals who are playing, the two teams who are playing, are good at the club level. At the international level, when the teams are playing, they are international elite sportsmen. So, at every level, what you will find is there are several sportsmen, there are several teams which are at par if it comes to practice, if it comes to the ability. So any team has chances to win. So who wins on that particular day? The sportsman, the team that shows better focus, the sportsman that plays better. Now, what will make you play better is the mind set at that particular time. So, it is the psychological factors. They are found to be constantly at bay, helping or hindering the performance. So, how your mind plays games with you on the ground is sports psychology, if I have to tell a very simple definition.
Well, a lot of athletes today, or a lot of sports people, they as a normal audience, or as a very generic audience, if we see, if someone is really performing, they say that wow, he's physically so strong. But in a lot of shows, even when I've asked this question to many experts, they say that mind is 99% and body is 1%. How will you rate that proportion?
Um, yes. I would not deviate much from it, because if your mind is not ready to perform on a particular day, you cannot perform. Even if your body is equipped with all the skills. So, be it concentration at that moment of the time, be it the energy, be it the motivation to perform, be it that killing instinct. All these factors are psychological factors. And again, let me tell you, there are a lot of sportsmen. If you just look at the stories of sports people, you will find, oh my god, the
Yeah.
person was so exhausted, almost going to drop, but realized it's these few moments which are to go, and pulled up all the energy. From where did this energy come from? It's more of the psychic energy which comes in. So yes, it's a mind game,
So, ma'am, tell us.
definitely.
Tell us what is the exact role of a sports psychologist in a sports person's life, and does every player need a sports psychologist?
Ideally, the answer is yes. Let me just give you this example of this small club match, amateur players. So there were two 10, 11-year-old boys who were practicing badminton in that club, and it was an internal competition of the club. Now, the moment the word competition comes in, emotions run high, energy runs high. These two boys very excited on the field, and the judge tells them it's a 12-point game. तो जो
Wow.
कोई 12 points पहले बनाएगा वो जीत जाएगा. So it's a club level match. So it's the rules are that way. And the match starts, and here is one boy takes the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh point. Okay, so it's 7 love. Now the mother of the boy who is scoring is almost jumping in her seat. The boy who has not scored a single point just pauses, asks the judge, what is the score? And the judge says it's 7 love. So he said, it's fine. And then the boy starts playing, and it's his game. From 7 love to 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 12 straight points. What has happened? Probably the boy was not concentrating. The concentration comes in, the sporting spirit, the killing spirit comes in. Probably realizes 7-0 is a bad score, and probably the student, the player who is playing well, starts getting overconfident, starts losing
Okay.
concentration because of overconfidence. So that's it. So, what is the job of a sports psychologist? See, sports psychology comes in sports in two ways. One, to enhance the performance of the sports person. So, it is
Right.
completely focused on competitive sports. But there is one more angle to sports psychology, which is the research in sports psychology, which tells that sports psychology is not only useful for people who play competitive sports, but it is also very much useful for those people who are not into competitive sports but love to play, and probably encouraging those people who would want to play and ask a question, why should I be playing? What is the benefit of games and sports? So, from the mental health perspective, also, sports psychology is coming up now very strongly. And then, if you are asking me what a sports psychologist does, it's like everything. Helps the person to focus. The personality factors of the player come in to a very great extent while competing. And I'm talking only during the competition part, when the person is
Right.
on the
Right.
competition ground. So the personality factors coming, the anxiety comes in, the pressure from oneself, the pressure from parents or the coaches, from the institution comes in, and forgetting all the negatives, focus on the positive till the end. These are the major aspects which the sports psychologist would look at on the ground. But yes, sports psychologist contributes a lot during the practice time also. So I'm
So,
sure
ma'am,
we.
I wanted to ask a very yeah. Please
Sorry.
continue. Please continue.
No, I was
No, no, you
just
were saying
wanting to
something. You
give
continue.
this example of Neeraj, who won the first Olympic gold for us in javelin
Yeah.
throw. Now, if you would have looked at him just before the match, here he's coming, he's, jumping on the spot, he's just going, he's just looking, and we find him so cool. Is the person really so cool? It's one of the toughest match in which the person is participating. But that's what sports psychology teaches you at that moment. How would you go about your routine? And then again, what you will find, he throws his bhala, the score comes in, he just picks it up, walks, and throws the other one. But lot must be going on in his mind in order to do a good performance on the field at that point in time. That's where sports psychology comes in. Yeah.
Interesting when you mention, because when we are watching it on the TV, it looks very simple and it looks so relaxing that you really think that, oh wow, he's finally done it. But as you rightly said, there are a lot of efforts and there is a lot of practice and that goes those magic. But let me just that psychologist, you were also a Malkham player. Tell us something about that journey, because we really love to hear some interesting journey of your life as a Malkham.
I started at a very young age, around the age of 6 or so, at Sri Samartha Mandir. And
Yeah.
it was my group of students who would just go there and play. Because there was no specialized sports for girls at that time in the institution. And I still very distinctly remember the day when my coach, who was a student, who was a competitor, a player at that time, he comes on the assembly, Shri Uday Deshpande, and he asks that who will like to learn Malkham. And then we are a few girls very enthusiastically raise our hands. And then it's my first batch in my institution in early 1970s, where we started learning Malkham. And I'm one of the very few fortunate students, because my practice started on learning on cane Malkham, which then later on has got replaced by rope Malkham. But then I was doing a lot of yoga also, I was doing a lot of gymnastics also, because when I was doing Malkham, nearly till the fag end of my sports career, there were no competitions for girls in Malkham.
Right.
So major competitions which I have played is in yoga. I have played lot of competitions, national level, medal winning performance in gymnastics, and of course towards in 1980s, when the Malkham competitions for girls started. uh, I did play Malkham. I did win a lot of medals. But one thing I remember all throughout my this sports journey as a competitive player was, I always loved to teach. I always loved to study. I was a judge at a very young age, and I wanted parents to send their children to sports. More than a competitive player, I would say my interest was in the other area of sports, that is more of sports promotion.
So, ma'am, quickly ask you, more and also, being
Your voice
physiologist,
is cracking a lot. I'm not able
psychology.
to hear
Hello.
you. Hello?
Uh, so,
Yeah,
can you hear me now?
yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So being a player, yourself, does it help you, to understand the psychology of
Yes. Being a player comes as a huge advantage. In fact, I'll like to tell you, when I was a player, Deshpande sir
Can you hear
used
my
to
voice?
get a yeah. Deshpande sir used to get a magazine from America, and the name was Gymnast. And we would just very curiously look at it, because it had all the foreign gymnasts, their beautiful dresses, leotards, tracksuits, which was not something very common with us at that time. And in that gymnast, there used to always be one article on sports psychology. Reading is my passion. So, when I get magazine, anything to read, generally I had the habit at that time, as a school going girl, that read everything. कुछ समझ में आ रहा है या नहीं आ रहा है, लेकिन पढ़ना है. And that psychology was something that was clicking. After my 10th standard, my brother had already gone for engineering. My marks were good. I was an intelligent student, and my parents very much wanted me to become a doctor. And till that time, my passion for sports had become stabilized. And I said that if I go for science, my chances of being in sports probably would get marginalized extensively. So with lot of conflict and fights at home, I chose arts. But then I was very excited to read the word psychology in it. Mm, and yes, being a player on in the competitive sport, I think I am able to understand the anxieties, the worries, the tensions, the stresses which a sportsman goes through. But it is not only about sportsmen. As I told you, at that point in time, it is the audience, it is the expectations of the parents, of the institutions, of the friend. In today's world, expectations of lot of unseen people who are watching you on the television, or similar media, who are listening to the sports commentary. And that pressure can be immense pressure. I would just like to narrate this story which has happened between Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova. They were playing in a prestigious competition on American soil. And Chris Evert is an American player. Martina Navratilova, an American citizen, but basically from Czechoslovakia. What happened on the field? Both the players playing, and the American audience was supporting Chris Evert. So, every shot of Chris Evert was getting huge applause. Uh, Martina, whenever she made a good shot, there was silence in the stadium. Whenever she made a mistake, there was a lot of booing. And Martina started losing her concentration. She started playing badly. When the two players went aside and they sat, that's the part of tennis. Martina receives a small note. The bellboy comes and gives her a note. She reads the note, and the note says, Martina, the audience is against you. Forget the world. The audience. Maybe the world is against you. Forget the world. Here on the ground, there is one fan of yours who wants you to win. So play your game, Martina. And it's signed by Chris Evert. Now you just see the equation on the ground, where a game is happening, when one player is playing well, getting a lot of support, the other player is losing concentration because she's not getting supported, and here comes one note. Bus. That changes Martina's mood, that changes Martina's focus. Martina wins the game. Again, you will realize what's coming in here. It's not the player's skill. What is coming in with maybe lot of experience, with lot of practice, but that focus and that emotion, you know, and the understanding from probably a best example of sportsman spirit coming from the opponent. That was a game changer. And then with a lot of sports movies which we are watching in recent past, I'm sure people are also understanding that it's important not only to play well but also to think constructively and positively.
Ma'am, you've been, for your remarkable, contribution to this field. You've been awarded by, Hirkani Puraskar and many other prestigious Puraskars in life. When you now look back, how special is it to, be, you know, achieved so much and appreciated by so many, professionals.
See, any appreciation always gives a good feeling. Yes. But I think uh, it's the work which gives a lot of satisfaction, because you're on the stage, you're receiving an award, you're receiving appreciation that comes as a temporary phase in your life. On day to day level, what are you doing daily, that matters for the students, that matters for the coaches, that matters to the institution. So I think I'm more happy being on the ground. I'm more happy. You know, uh, India somehow does not have a huge background when it comes to sports research, and that too very authentic sports research. So you will find handful of people doing it. I got the opportunity to do this sports research. That was my topic of my doctoral study. I got the PhD degree for that. I looked at the psychological benefits that are derived from participation in Malkham. And then I looked at the neuropsychological variables. See, it is the frontal lobe, the front side of our brain, the frontal lobe. It is said to be the executive function area. So that's the area which takes decisions. That's the area which is involved in problem solving. And these are some of the very crucial aspects in sports, because you have learned, you have practiced. But at that moment, you have to decide, what game I'm going to play, what kind of throw I'm going to make. So, problem solving, decision making, attention, concentration, emotional intelligence, and the testing of students, using all these neuropsychological tests. And so, research is one area which gives me a lot of satisfaction. So, when I'm looking back, yes, I'm happy, but it also makes you realize lot of things yet to happen.
Well, two quick things as we, are exploring a lot of things when we ask you, about this particular field. But how can you make a career of this field if, anyone wants to, do sports psychology as their, their career goal? What is the career in that, and what are the prospects in which, a professional can grow?
The prospects are fantastic. See, people have started realizing now that sports psychologists are needed. And it is not only the individuals who are realizing, but it is also the institutions. It is also India which has started realizing that, yes, we need to have a sports psychologist. And a lot of Indian teams, a lot of Indian players at their personal level have taken help from sports psychologists. Dr. Bishmaraj Kabam, who introduced sports psychology in India to a very great extent, has been associated with so many elite players. Uh, Psychology is, to some extent, still a taboo word. So, when
Yeah.
somebody says, "Oh, you have to take help of a psychologist," people will say, "Oh, I'm not mad. I don't need a psychologist." But if that initial apprehension is done away with, sports psychologists at the individual level uh, coaching a player, that can be done, could be a part of an institution where the person is working as a sports psychologist, and lot of organizations are hiring. I'm involved to a very great extent in taking workshops for the parents, taking workshops for the teachers, taking workshops at the university level, where I talk of sports psychology, specifically in the context of promotion to sports. This is my favorite question when I'm talking to parents. I ask them, अगर बच्चे ने पढ़ाई नहीं की तो आप बच्चे को बोलते हो आज मैं खेलने को नहीं छोड़ूंगी या टीवी नहीं देखने दूंगी. How many parents do this? So almost all parents raise their hands. Then I ask the second question. I ask them, how many of you tell your kid कि ठीक है आज पढ़ाई नहीं की तो भी चलेगा लेकिन आपको मैदान पे जाके खेलना ही चाहिए. And this has been my experience. Hardly any parent says yes. Rather, none of the parents will say, I do it. So, as a sports psychologist, it is very important to reach out to the society to tell the society that sports is important in the life of a child. बच्चा फर्स्ट स्टैंडर्ड में सेकंड स्टैंडर्ड में थोड़े कम मार्क्स लाएगा तो भी इट्स ऑल राइट. Let him develop some liking towards study, the child will study. But at all the ages, at all the stages, the child should play, because it's the game which is going to give good quality of life. It is the game which is going to give good mental health. And then I'm not talking about the fitness and physical benefit aspects. So, as a sports psychologist, promotion of sports, that also comes as a fantastic career option. And again, I'm finding very good results. Yes, when you reach out to parents, it definitely helps.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, after hearing you, this word taboo will not exist in their life, because it's very nicely and briefly explained by you that how sports, psychology has touched a different level today. But, ma'am, before we go and before we leave, one last questions. What will you tell to all those aspiring new players to how they can maintain, the balance between physical and mental health?
See, let me tell you, physical practice is important. But a lot of coaches still today believe that it is the physical practice which is important. I have seen lot of times on the ground when the coach feels that if I shout, then the player will perform well. It's not that. You need to use punishment. Maybe I'm not denying the role or importance of little punishment, but I'm also going to emphasize the role of reward. The child should learn to associate performance with rewards, failures with understanding, and not pressure and breakdowns. So, very important information can reach out to coaches and parents and institutions and to the player himself. A lot of time you will see examples in the field of sports that जैसे सचिन तेंदुलकर है आज 100 बनाए हैं लेकिन कल जीरो भी बनाए हैं. So the range can go from zero to a century. Consistency is very important. So that also is a part of psychology and not physical practice only. Mental imagery that comes as a very important technique in sports can aid physical practice. So if the player is injured, if the player is in the stage of rehabilitation, when the person cannot practice, if the player is sick, psychological techniques of practice, they aid the players to a very great extent. But sports psychology is not a quick fix thing. हाँ, मैंने सोच लिया और कर दिया. बहुत सारे कोचेस भी बोलते हैं हाँ मैंने आर्टिकल पढ़ा था, मैं स्पोर्ट्स साइकोलॉजी का टेक्निक मेरे बच्चों के ऊपर यूज करता हूँ. No, it's the way you do physical practice. Sports training also requires homework. It also requires training by an expert. good use of it is going to benefit one competitively, definitely. But second, because see, competition is a small part of the entire career. We need good mental
Yeah,
health and we need good quality of life. So, sports psychology
right.
will contribute to these two very important aspects also.
So that was Dr. Neeta Tatke, senior sports psychologist with us, who told us, various things very nicely and very briefly. So once again, ma'am, I would like to thank you from the entire Sports Indie group, the Meaty group, and yes, the world of sports, is getting bigger and bigger, because of experts like you, because you all are at the back end, at the background, but you are actually helping them, or empowering the athletes to perform better day by day. So thank you so much, and we all want to only tell you that keep up the good work, and thank you so much to talk to us and
Yeah.
sharing your wonderful thoughts with us.
Yeah. Thank you. My thanks and appreciation again to Sports Indie, the World of Sports, and Mythic Group. Namaste.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.